rocking with some of the realest coaches in the game. Coach RB and Coach CB. Area code 459.
What up, area code 459? It's your boy, Coach B, man. I'm here with my dog, Coach CB. What's up, CB?
What's up, Coach? How you doing?
And I'm blessed. I'm super excited for this episode today, talking about leveraging the lesson. But before we get to the episode, go ahead and thank some people.
We want to give a shout out to In-House Ink for the awesome logo that they've created behind us. We also want to give a shout out to Jade May Crafts for all of her amazing household items that she's created, along with helping us get our shirts and this awesome hoodie together. Also want to give a shout out to our guy, George Frost, for East Bay. He has done an amazing job setting up our team store. If you guys want our logo on all your favorite Nike and Jordan apparel, make sure you click the link below. Also, we can't forget all the people that have supported us, our friends and our family. We couldn't have done it without them. And most importantly, God for giving us the vision for area code 459.
Man, I'm super fired up because I get to introduce the lesson, or I get to introduce the episode today talking about leveraging the lesson. And man, when I thought about this opening, and I thought to myself, I'm like, man, you know, it's like when I used to sit in the church and the preacher used to get up and get ready to preach. And you're like, man, I know that lunch is going to be on the way soon, but you want to know how long he's going to speak. All I can tell you right now, listeners, is we're not going to speak to you long. We're going to drop some nuggets for you today. Today's episode is about leveraging the lesson. In the simplest terms, it's really just learning from a mistake. Being athletes, I'm certain that we have gone through many trials and tribulations on and off the court or the field, and we use the setbacks as moments to pause, gain clarity, gain wisdom, and set ourselves up with a pathway towards success or a comeback. I want to use this conversation as an opportunity to be very candid with our listeners and viewers, and how our lives are not always these fancy sparkles and rainbows or these candy canes and unicorns, but it's actually a grouping of lessons that has given us the wisdom and forged us upon a pathway or our destiny. So the first question I have for you, CB, is name a time when you turned a loss into a lesson.
I've been through so many. I think the most recent one right now is coronavirus taking away our ability to win a national championship. And to this day, that moment, that time when coach came on the bus and said, all right, and you could tell in his face like the season was over and there's nothing we could do to change it, that was the hardest moment that I've probably ever had to go through when it comes to sports and chasing a dream and a goal and actually having it within my reach. And to this day, like I think about it, and people always talk about basketball, the NCAA tournament, like national championships, like football is the biggest thing right now. And they're talking about SEC championship, national championship, and all this stuff. And every time I hear somebody talk about the championship, and I coach high school basketball, so state championship has been the talk of what we've been doing. And it's just like, I hurt so much. But the lesson that I learned from that is sometimes God's not saying no, but he's just saying not yet. You know, and that time might not have been my time to win a championship, but maybe there's a not yet coming my way, and maybe it comes from coaching, maybe it comes from something else, playing or whatever that is. But like I had to leverage, like, yes, I worked my whole entire life for this moment, this pinnacle of success when it comes to being a player as a college athlete, and that's winning a national championship. But the lesson I got from it was basketball taught me hard work. It taught me perseverance. It taught me leadership. It taught me all of these qualities that if I hang up my hat on the fact that I didn't get to win a national championship, I'm not looking at everything that it's taught me. And so it might not be a no, but it's a not yet at the moment. But at the same time, I still have to look back and see, okay, I saw hard work turn into success. I saw discipline turn into success. I saw leadership help me build lifelong lasting friendships that I would never have gotten had I not allowed sports to teach me that. So that is one of the biggest losses I've had to face so far. But I've gotten so many lessons out of it.
Mm. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like the same thing. And trust me, I'm a little bit older than you, so I've had way more losses. But and we can, dive a little bit deeper into some of those. But I'll just give you kind of like a tidbit, kind of how I had a loss or numerous losses as an athlete that turned into a big lesson that turned into a pathway of success as a coach. And being in high school, I I actually competed in 3 state champions ships in weightlifting, and I actually was probably one of the most dominant weightlifters in this panhandle at that time. And with that being said, is didn't lose very much, dominated all the competition, but I always got to the end and couldn't put together what I needed to do to be successful. And there's weightlifters that came after me at my high school that I competed at and at the high school that I coached at that have done way more better things or way bigger things than I ever could imagine. And some of us when we talk about competing against errors, right? You could say, well, their era is a little bit easier to be successful in, but I'm not going to take away from their accomplishments. I'm just going to say that I didn't get the things done. Either I didn't practice hard enough, or I didn't research hard enough, or I didn't, really get really good at a technique. And what I noticed is when I got to coaching, I got an opportunity to coach a weightlifting team. And my first year coaching, we actually won the state championship. And I remember that whole season from start to beginning. I would tell the players, I'm like, I've been in your position. I've been in your shoes. I've done this 3 times as a player. I know there are certain things that you are going to miss out if you don't do it this way. And some of the things were vision, right? We were very vision oriented the year we won the state championship. We sat down at the very beginning of the season and says, hey, we're going to be a state champion, and this is how we got to get to it. Another one was discipline and commitment, like showing up to practice and being disciplined to our technique. That's one thing that I felt like I suffered when I was in competing. I remember that I actually got third my senior year, but I actually tied for second and lost on a technicality. And but I always in my mind, I'm like, I was right there at the pinnacle of state champion, state runner up, and I actually went for the record in clean and jerk, which was 250 at the time for 129 pounds. And I didn't get it over my head because I didn't work on my technique. I wasn't disciplined to my technique. So that year we were talking about vision, we were talking about commitment, we were talking about technique. But the one thing that was different, the year we won the state championship versus the 3 years that I competed was I was just out there doing it for myself. The year that I coached, it was more about the team. It was more about doing it for somebody bigger than yourself, doing it for something other than yourself, leveraging your teammates, leveraging your community, like actually putting something on your shoulders and saying this can be done. For the people that are listening, the high school that I coached at in Panama City Beach, they just won 2 girls state championships in a row, and they're getting ready to win their 3rd. And they have an awesome staff, weightlifting staff there. But I honestly feel, and I tell the boys that, when we come together and we reminisce and we pass in conversations, I said, I think that we were the team that showed people that that was possible. Like, I felt like the state championship teams that were before them were so far ahead of them that they didn't really understand that feeling. But we brought that feeling back to our school. And within, 3-4 years, our girls are over there doing the same thing. And it's a wonderful feeling. It's a wonderful taste to have. And, that just reminds me of, taking that hard loss as a child and turning it into a lesson and then turning it into growth. And that was a big thing. Like we said at the high school that I worked at, failure leads to success. And that was one of our things. Like we could fail, but we're going to fail together as a team and we're going to build up. As we talk about lessons and we talk about failure leads to success, CB, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned when you fail at something?
I think the number one lesson is one time I was doing gymnastics and I competed at the
You pause. Do that one more time. Say what that was again.
One time I was competing in gymnastics, and I was a level 9 gymnast. So the biggest competition that you can go to is called Eastern Nationals, where you compete against the eastern half of the United States. And I had the best meet of my life, but because of certain events, I placed second. And it was as a result of a girl that competed at a higher level dropping down into our realm of competition at the last minute, and she ended up winning the whole entire event, every event in the whole competition, which she set history when she did that. But that at that moment taught me humility, because I was the best gymnast in my age group against all the girls that I had been competed against. But at the same time, life tells you not everything's fair, And so I think the number one lesson is humility. Like, there's always some room to grow. There's always ways to be better. There's always ways to learn and stretch yourself and move forward and continue to be better. I think the second lesson is that, like I just said, there's always something more that you can do. Like, if you become complacent, then you're going to fail, because everything is always evolving. Like, we have computers and phones, and every year there's something new that comes out. And I love to leverage this, but in the Black Panther, Black Panther's sister told him that she wanted to update these beads that he had. And he said they work fine. And she's like, how many times do I have to tell you that just because something works fine doesn't mean that there's something to improve upon? And that's the same for our life. It's like, just because we're great at something, just because we know what we're doing, doesn't mean that there's not ways to improve and continuously grow at what we're doing. So I think the two biggest lessons for me is humility, and then that there's always a way to continue to grow and get better.
Right. I would say the biggest lessons that I learned when I fell at something is my number one is grit. Grit. And it reminds you of the definition of grit. It's like the courage to show the strength of passion in your character through perseverance and passion. So the idea, like, with grit is when you're knocked down, like, do you get up, right? When you fail, do you turn around and face the do you turn around and face the problem head on, or do you run away? I played college football, so that was like a big thing. I was not always the biggest. I think I graduated high school at 5'5", 130 pounds. I ended up playing at 5'7", 165. But that was the idea. Like, when you got hit or you missed a block, do you just let it go and move on, or do you, or do you run away from it? Anybody that, knows football, you got to be a little bit crazy. You're not really wrapped too tight. You're a gladiator, you're a warrior, you're just out there busting heads. And the idea is that it always showed that grit. And I felt like I carried that over to my life and who I am as a coach, as a person, as a man, husband, friend, whatever have you that I have at that moment, or I'm dealing with at that moment. I show that grit, I show that character, I show that passion, I show that perseverance. Resilience is another one. There's a whole slew of adjectives that go with that, but grit is definitely the number one. And I would say that taking my first professional head job, that was a big thing that had to show my determination and my grit and my passion, because I felt that the basketball team I had wasn't very good. And to be honest with you, everybody that I talked to and was mentored by told me, taking this job, there was 8 seniors there, and he was like, cut every senior. And you think to yourself, like, man, I have to go into this new school, cut every senior, and start from the bottom up. And a smart coach would say that's something you need to do. But I'm not a very smart coach, and we already know that. But when I look back at that, of me not taking that step, those relationships I have with some of those players that I didn't cut. You know what I mean? One of the closest friends I have was a senior point guard that wasn't, in my mind at the beginning when I first got him, he wasn't very good to me. But he ended up playing college basketball. He's a very well versed educator, very well versed basketball coach in Memphis. loving husband, great father, great, all these great things. And it really tells you like, hey, I had that grit, I had that resilience, I had that passion to enact all this into that young man. And now he carries that torch and he does great things for his community, does things above and beyond what some of the things that I did when I was his age. So, you sometimes when you look at losses, or you look at lessons, you have to look at, to sometimes that, gaining some of that knowledge on the other side, that was that wisdom, and saying, hey, you know what? This is more than a game. I'm going to change these 8 seniors' lives. And, honestly, they changed who I was as a coach, because it stopped being about the X's and O's and it starts being about the Larrys and Joes. And it started being about the kids. And it started being about, building them as successful individuals in life. And I put that over winning. And, I'm a very fierce competitor. And to put that over winning was a wisdom step for me.
I think I love that you talk about grit and determination, because when you said that, it just made me think back to like Panama City. And it's funny because I live in Atlanta now, and they're always like, man, this storm is terrible. And I'm just sitting here like, bro, this is a regular storm. You have no idea.
Right.
And so when Hurricane Michael came through, it made our whole entire city look devastated, like a war zone. I mean, we've lived there so long that you can drive around the city on autopilot and be like, dude, I don't even know how I got here, but I'm here.
Right.
glad I'm safe. And when that hurricane came through, it was a complete rebuild. And I think that's what failure looks like. Failure looks like that storm coming through and wrecking your life. And it might not be devastating to you, but it wrecks something that you were trying to achieve. But you have to continuously rebuild, just like people rebuild their homes, rebuild their businesses, rebuild their schools. Like, you have to do the same thing with your life. When you fail, it's like, okay, how do I rebuild what I was trying to accomplish and do it better and make it stronger? Because when a hurricane comes through, you're not going to just rebuild the same exact house, because if another one comes through, it's going to do the same thing. You got to build it better, stronger, and more sustainable to the storms that are going to come through next. And the same thing with your life. You don't want to just do the same thing again, because you're just going to get knocked down again. So how can you become better, stronger, more equipped, more knowledgeable, wiser, so the next time that the storm comes through, it doesn't hit you as strong. Like, it might be the same strength, but because you've grown through it, it's not going to hit you as hard.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So our next question is, why is gaining wisdom from the downfall pitfalls so important? And what do you do with that new gained wisdom?
Like you always say, if you don't know your history, then you're bound to repeat it. So I always say information is knowledge, it's facts, but it's what you choose to do with that knowledge is what makes you wise. And you have to leverage that from other people, because I'm 22, almost 23. So I've been through 22 years of life, almost 23 now, but there are people that have been through 50, 75. My great-grandfather's 95. So how can I ask him questions? How can I learn? How can I grow from these people that have been through lessons that I haven't seen yet? I might see them. So when they start to recognize that I'm about to go into the same situation that they've already faced, then I need to make sure that my ears are open to listen, because it might keep me from making the same mistakes or having to go through a complete failure to learn the lesson that they've already been trying to teach me. And so I think that's what's important, is when you go through these pitfalls and downfalls, it really teaches you how to come back to center and ground yourself. Because if I go, like, let's say gymnastics to basketball is probably one of the most memorable things I can tell you when it comes to pitfalls. And it wasn't a pitfall, but it was a complete rechange in my life. Like, I had been doing something for my whole entire life that I never played another sport. Yes, I watched it, but when I started to pick up basketball, it's like, okay, what can I do to become better at basketball? And what I learned from gymnastics was consistency. Every day I'm going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Every day I'm going to grow. I'm going to find somebody that's going to help me do that. You know, because I always had coaches in my life. I always had teammates that pushed me to be better and that I spent my whole life with. So when I went to basketball, it's like, okay, I don't have that family behind me anymore, but how can I create the same one?
Mm-hmm.
So that helped me, that lesson, that pitfall, that change, complete change, that 360, I took what I learned from gymnastics, and it's honestly the only reason why I became good at basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Because I worked hard every day, because I was determined, because I never gave up, because in gymnastics you have to fail until you find success. And once you find that success, now you have to repeat that success over and over again so you don't fail. Like, I can't tell you how many times I came home with a beam burn on my back from falling so many times off the beam, the bars, jamming my fingers or falling on my face so many times. But once I learned how to catch the skill, or once I learned how to land the skill, I was able to replicate the success. And now, because of that, I have some valuable lessons to take with me throughout life. So now I don't have to go through life and get scratches and bruises and burns from life on my soul. But now I'm able to use those lessons and leverage those lessons and that wisdom to make sure that I'm not as burned as I was when I'd had happened to fail the first time.
Got you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect it. I'm going to connect mine to kind of I'm going to go back to the Hurricane Michael story you were saying, and how Hurricane Michael came and just made our city just basically like a war zone, like shaved all the trees, F5 tornadoes everywhere. And, you know, basically everybody's life is in devastation. And then as soon as the storm is over, like we didn't know where to turn. We were national news for like all of 3 days. And then next thing you know, we had to build it up ourselves. It reminds me of just kind of how life gives you hurricanes and life gives you tornadoes and you get knocked down. And I always talk about my faith and how I'm rooted in something that could always stick to, that could always ground me and put me, you know, I might fall down, but I can always put my 2 feet on this foundation. And it reminds me of a song we used to sing when I was little, and we talked about God, the solid rock I stand, all of the ground is sinking sand. And it's like, you know, once life knocks you down, you know where to go back to. You know where to revert back to, through failures, through pitfalls. You know where you can always get a solid rock. And for me, it's my faith, right? It's like, okay, I know that I might be financially in a struggle right now, or I might be mentally drained, or my passion and my heartbeat's not thumping the right way. I know where I can always go back and get that. And that's just that wisdom that, hey, you know where you can always identify who you can identify with, your purpose partners, what you can identify with, your faith, and always the growth. The other thing you talked about was history. And I wanted to share this because I'm being a history teacher, being a history major, somebody's taught it over a decade and, you know, still works with it. And you said history, if you don't know your history, bound to repeat yourself. And I always ask people when I have conversations with them, I said, you know, what is history, right? And, you know, you always get these weird different answers like collection of facts, biographies of men, you know, just fake or boring, you know. And history was always, to me, it is shared through the minds and the temperaments of the people who place their own interpretation upon it. And why I gave the definition of history is because when you are leveraging a lesson, you always have to think back of some of the things that you either did right or that you either did wrong. And it has to come into your computer, right? And it has to compute out what you're going to do next, right? So you have the opportunity to take that lesson and turn it into action, right? You talked about, hey, I knew that I had to leverage, or I had to fall a bunch of times on the beam before I got the right technique. And when I got the right technique or the right skill, I mastered that skill. And I know in basketball, you know, that left hand is trash if you're right-handed. It's going to always be trash until you work on it. But as you master that skill, you start to build up that confidence and that skill work and that grit to go left. I know some of the best right-handed players love driving to the left side. It's because they work on it so much. It's almost like they have the confidence to use it. So when it comes to wisdom, through the pitfalls and through the downfalls of your life, I just always want to have people know that the most important thing to gain is to where you can go back and center yourself, like you said, where you could go back and get focused. I use my faith. And that's where I always, when I'm in a downfall, when I'm, people call it a pickle, or when I'm in a pitfall in my life, I always use that faith to recenter me and to re-energize me. And we learned on a couple podcasts ago, to readjust, right? It gives me an opportunity to readjust and to reevaluate and move forward.
I have a question for you. Do you think it's possible to be successful without ever failing?
No, I don't think so. And I feel like even the most successful people I feel fail. Every one of the most famous stories in American history is obviously Bill Gates, right? His rise to whoever he is today. And it was somebody had to tell him no. I think that a lot of people, and then also I feel like failure is also failure is also what you make it to. Because sometimes failure might not be a failure to you, but it might be the failure in the eyes of others. And the reason why I say that is because I wanted to kind of shift to this idea of when people tell you no, does the no mean that you failed, or does the no mean it's time for a readjustment, right? Is the no making you a lesson? There's probably people that are listening to this who've been cut from basketball teams before, right? Or didn't get the promotion they wanted, or didn't get the job that they want. Does that mean that you're a total failure? No, that means that you are successful at something, but God might be shutting that door down to open a bigger door for you later. You know what I mean? I remember one of the interviews that I thought I killed for this private school I wanted so bad. And I just took a team. I just won a state championship in weightlifting. And then I just took a team who'd never been to the playoffs in 15 years to the playoffs, and their first top 25 ranking in 5A basketball. You think to yourself, like, I just turned a program around, and I had my own successful AAU club that was putting kids in college. And so you think, this is an opportunity for me. And I was a great teacher, and I went in, gave a great interview. And to be honest with you, it was a no. You know what I mean? I got all the way to the end, top 2 candidates. They decided to go with someone else. And I thought to myself, like, man, what did I do? Was there something wrong with me? Did I fail? And it wasn't that I failed. It was the fact that God was opening the door for me to do something bigger and better, right? I feel like now, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. You know what I mean? I work for one of the top education companies in the world. You know what I mean? I sit in with superintendents, and I sit in with executive directors of education. I sit in with higher ed people, and I think to myself, like, I'm around all this brain power of education, and I would have never been there had I got the little small private school job. You know what I mean? And I'm not knocking the guy who got the private school job, because I know him personally, and he's a really good friend of mine, and he does big things as well outside of that private school. But I thought to myself, like, I would have probably been stuck in this little box, and I don't think God wanted me there. I think God wanted me somewhere else. So that failure right there really was an opportunity to reevaluate. It was a no. It was a lesson. It was like, hey, this is what you do. And to be honest with you, that interview, everything that I prepped for that interview, I prepped the same way for my job that I have now. And when I thought to myself, I'm like, I'm prepping the same way. But there were moments that I said, okay, I could do this, or I could do this better, or I could do this. And some of the things that I left on the table in that interview that I was very close to getting the job, I pulled out all the stops in this next interview, right? And it literally pushed me over the top. So, I don't think that there is a successful person out there that hasn't failed. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of successful people that still fail every day, right? But they have so much going for them one failure right here might end up being 30 wins over here. So you really have to just kind of think about it from that standpoint and not be afraid of failure.
Yeah, I agree with you, but at the same time, I do think it's possible to succeed without failing, but that type of success is never going to be fulfilling because it's minor success. It's little successes. Like, I feel like you can succeed every day, but the thing that you're really going for, like, you have to fail to be able to succeed, because to really succeed, to hit the goal wherever you're trying to get it. You know what I mean? And so, like, the one thing that I love Kobe Bryant, and the one thing that I love that he always says was, you can get to the mountain, but there's always somebody trying to take your spot. He said, so what are you doing to make sure that you stay above and beyond everybody else so they can never reach you? You know, and that's how I feel that failure does for you. It allows you to rise above those that aren't willing to fail. You know, I always say this, I'd rather ask a question, or I'd rather find out something and get a no than to never ask or never research or never try, because at the end of the day, at least I know that my answer is no. Because if I didn't do any of those things, then behind that door could be a yes. And because I didn't want to fail, or because it was uncomfortable to do whatever it took to get through that door to find the answer, I became complacent, you know, and I may have succeeded at some little thing, but when it comes to what my life entails, then that might not have been what my life was trying to become, you know. And so I do feel like you can fail. I mean, you can be successful without failing, but to truly succeed in life, to truly do what you want to do, you have to fail. Like, you just have to. You have to learn the lessons. You have to figure out how to do things wrong so you know how to do it right, so you know how to replicate the success. And I was listening to Coach Penny Collins, the head coach at Tennessee State, yesterday, and he said, if you haven't failed, don't worry. It knows your address. It's about to come knocking on your door. And I was like, that's so true, because like, you can't go through life and not fail. If you did that, then you were just doing like this and sitting in your chair all day long, not even walking out your house door, like, not trying to accomplish anything. So you have to fail. You have to know that you don't know everything. And at that point in time, then that's when you become a student. Like, that's when you become, okay, I go to class every day. If I didn't study for this, then I would get an F. But I have to continuously study to know the information so I can become successful. And that's the same thing with life. You have to continuously study what life puts you through so you know how to continue to be successful when it comes back around.
Yeah. That's big. That's big.
I got a question for you, though. Anything going on at this moment? Is there anything that you have going on at this moment that you don't feel is going your way? And can you sense a moment of pause and growth happening?
I can't say it as of today, but I can actually talk about this past year. But it's funny that you said that Kobe Bryant quote, that, and I've heard that too, him say that, you get to the mountain, but somebody's always trying to take your spot. So what are you doing to stay above the fray, or above that person? And, one thing that I know about history and economics and social sciences is the fact that there's a lot of people up there who haven't earned it. And when they're up there, they see people that are hungry and that have grit and that are leveraging lessons, that are failing, and they're gaining wisdom, gaining on them. So what they do is they tend to oppress those people that are marching up the mountain. And when you talk about this question, 4 years ago, I made a mistake. And I'll tell you, the mistake was that I didn't participate correctly in the election of the United States. And regardless of political affiliation, regardless of who you voted for, that's not what I'm trying to talk about. I'm trying to talk about those ancestors of mine that are African American, Black individuals who were slaves, that went through so much to fight for voting rights, and I didn't take it serious. To me, that was a disrespect. To me, that was not the right thing to do. And it wasn't very wise. And I felt that the last 4 years of the political realm, I just didn't feel like it was good for me and my family. So with that being said, I told myself this year that 4 years ago it was a loss for me because I didn't do the right thing. This year I'm going to do the right thing. And instead of failing, instead of feeling like I didn't do right by the people that that came before me, I started to study. And I studied both sides. I studied all the issues. I watched all the debates. I did everything that in my power to make an informed decision. Then when I went to the polls and I voted and I was done, I felt, you know what? I did what I was supposed to do. And regardless, like I said, of who you voted for, if that was your if that was your process, then that means that you respected the institution of the democracy and you respected the institution of the country and you did what you were supposed to do. If you just went out there and voted because you voted like this 30 years, I've heard somebody tell me that I voted like this 30 years, now I voted this way anyway. Or I heard somebody say, I'm just voting like this because of this. And I'm like, well, you're not doing what you're supposed to with the sacred part of that institution. And like I said, not everybody participates the same way, but being somebody who has an undergrad degree in political science, has an undergrad degree in history, worked for the governor of Alabama, and has a master's degree in history and taught it for over 10 years, I've got to respect the institution. And that was the pause and the growth for me. Was the pause and the growth was, hey, you have to continue to study, lifetime learner. You're in education. There's no way 4 years you just walked to the polls and thought it was funny because you didn't side with either one of them. So you voted a crazy way and disrespected the institution. 4 years later, being a little bit older now, 33, last time I was 29, I felt like a more sense of responsibility this time. And how does this kind of go back to that moment of giving pause and growing? Anytime you feel like you make a mistake, regardless of what the mistake or what the loss has taken you, never feel like it's too late to correct it. The only time that it's too late to correct a mistake is when I no longer breathe it out of this body. And that's when it's over. But with that being said, as long as I draw breath, as long as I have the ability to do something, as long as this mind works, as long as this body works, never feel like there isn't a moment for pause, there isn't a moment for growth. And I use that political story of mine because I felt like 4 years ago I had a bad situation in my mind. I didn't care. And this time around, I felt like I was a part of something special. And that's what people have to understand is you can always turn things around. You can always grow. You can always gain wisdom. You can fail at something and you can still be successful. And yes, I like how you said, you know what? You don't always have to fail to be successful because there are minor little successes that you always need to have. But when it comes to that big picture, you need to be able to readjust. You need to be able to reset. You need to be able to get back into it and always try to gain that wisdom or build something up.
Yeah, I like that you say that. In my life, I don't feel like anything has gone my way in 2020. But that doesn't mean good things haven't happened to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just the plan that I had for my life didn't happen the way I wanted it to. You know, I didn't get to win a national championship. I didn't get to have a college graduation. I didn't get to finish college with all my friends. Like, I didn't get to go back to school. I'm not working as a grad assistant. But at the same time, I have the ability to serve the person that was pushing for me so hard during the coronavirus time. So now I get to be on his staff, and now I get to serve him, and now I get to give back. And I'm still doing what I love to do, which is basketball. And it's a men's basketball, which I love even more. So, and he opened a door for me, you know, in his staff, so I could get some experience and and allow him to be a mentor to me in the game, you know, and like I'm so proud of him because Coach Huff was able to go get a head coaching college job. And at the same time, he said, I was worried about you.
Mm.
You know, and that's the kind of guy that I was working for is though he had so much on his plate to take and to find when it comes to his success, he was still worried about those that he was mentoring underneath him, you know, and that was what was important to me. It's like I paused, and because I had called him a bunch of times, I was like, Huff, like I don't know what to do, man. Like I'm not getting a grad spot here. I have a week to figure out if I'm going to be in Atlanta or not.
Mm.
Like time is pressing. Time is pressing me now, and so I went to my boss at the training company that I work for, and I said, if I'm going to coach, I said, that's what I want to do is I want to coach.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm going to coach, I'm only going to coach for Huff. I'm not coaching for anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, well, let me call over there. And I was like, I can call over there. Like, me and Huff are tight. And he's like, now let me do it. And so he called over there, and Huff texted me that day. And he's like, all right, let's get to work. I have a spot for you. He's like, I now have a star on my staff. I'm blessed. Like, you just made my day. And I was like, it's so interesting how God works sometimes because, like I said, he didn't tell me no. He just said, not yet, Caitlin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm still going to go back to school. I'm still going to be a grad assistant somehow, some way. Like, I'm still going to get my master's degree. But he said, not yet. And he placed me in an environment that has allowed me to grow and have a responsibility in a way that I never would have thought would have been possible. You know, and so I had to pause and I had to be like, Lord, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for this, because I'm not in a bad situation. I'm in a great situation. Might not have been the way that I saw my life playing out, but at the same time, now look where I'm at. Now look who I've been able to connect with. Now look at all this stuff. And it's given me time to continue the podcast. You know, it's continued to give me time to network. It's continued to give me the ability to grow. And on the flip side of that too, like during this time frame with all that other stuff, my car literally died on me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, there is no point in fixing it because it's way beyond repair, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm like, okay, now I'm stuck in the middle of Atlanta, no car. Like, how am I supposed to get anywhere? You know, and thankfully I live with some very gracious people, and they allowed me to borrow their car. And then God provided a brand new car with no car payment for me. And he just said, here, good and faithful servant.
Yep.
I'm blessing you.
I like it.
And it was hard for me to take the blessing because it's such a huge blessing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like, God was telling me, he's like, I'm giving this to you. You've prayed for a car. He said, you can't deny it. He said, this is your answer to your prayer. And so all of this stuff, like, nothing has gone my way, but at the same time, like, God has blessed me in so many ways. Just because my vision for my life didn't come to fruition doesn't mean that God doesn't have a greater plan for me. You know, and sometimes as humans, we only can see what's right in front of us. We only can see what's tangible. We can't see into the future. We only live in the present. But if we put our faith and trust in somebody that's higher, that can see farther and wider and longer than us and way beyond our what our mind can actually comprehend, then like there's so much more out there, so much greater things out there for you. And like my life is such a testament to that, because I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for Jesus Christ, you know, if it wasn't for God making a path and a way for my life. So that's how I've really had to pause during this time when we talked about being 2 feet into today, talked about growth, talked about all of these things. And in this time frame for the coronavirus, 2020 has really been a pause.
Right.
He said,
Right.
pause on the year, on your life. We're going to do something completely different, you know, and I'm thankful for it too, because I always say if I wasn't going through something, then I'm not happy, because I'm not growing. I'm not learning. I'm not being stretched.
Right. And, you know, it's kind of good that you said that, because, and trust me, anybody that listens is going to say the same thing about 2020. It put you in the house. It made you rethink the strategy. And those of us that say, you know what, we're not going to allow this to be a moment of despair. Those of us that have captured that grit, you know, and that believe in where we get our foundation from. You know, we just keep it moving. And some things aren't fun, trust me. You know, I had a pathway going this way, and come March, I started doing this and start saying yes to myself, start believing in God, start letting go and letting God, and things start happening, So I'm glad that, you see it that way, because 2020 was kind of jacked up for a lot of college students, including yourself, college athletes as well. And I feel for you guys, because I got to play all 4 years. I got to have a senior day. I got to have, all those accolades as a senior. And when you miss out on those are tough. And I graduated twice, or actually 3 times, and walked the stage all 3 times. So I get it. I get it. Here at Erico 459, we always talk about love and how it inspires and empowers our listeners and our community. What time, or give me a time where your love for others seem others seem to fail, and you had to readjust your mind and heart to continue to inspire and empower
I would say the community center. I'd say that's one of my biggest times when my love for people failed and I had to readjust my mind and my heart, because I'm just gonna say it. I was a white girl walking into a Black community,
others. It is what it is.
and they looked at me weird, and it took a long time for me to earn the trust of the people there. Not necessarily the older kids, but the younger kids that I work with every day. And I had to continue to go home and be like, okay, they don't like me, but I'm going to love them anyway. I chose to do that. I chose to continue to come to work every day and love the people that I worked with, and that made the biggest difference in the long run. They always say, like, you plant the seed. The day you plant the seed isn't the day you eat the fruit, and you have to continuously water. And you might plant the seed and water, or you might plant the seed and somebody else waters, or somebody else might plant the seed and now you have to water. But eventually it's going to grow, and it's going to take time. That I always hear, you can't put a time frame on somebody else's growth. Everybody grows at their own rate. And so eventually I continue to see the success in that love. I continue to see the fruit being produced, but it took 3 years for me to get that. And then it took 3 years for my kids to cry when I left. Like, it used to be they cheered when I didn't come to work, and now they're crying because they miss me so much and they want me there and they don't want me to leave. And that was hard, but it was also like, man, I see the difference that I made in these people. I know that I've left them better than when I found them. And I hope that whatever I've taught them, they continue to take with them throughout life while I'm not there anymore. When I think about them every day, I feel like if you could, those tattoos where you shine that UV light on, or those stamps you shine the UV light, and it only comes vibrant if you shine that light on. I feel like if you shined your light on my body, that there would be all these stamps of people that have invested into me, or that I've invested into them, that have left a mark on my life. And everybody's unique mark. And that's what love has done for me. It's allowed me to leave my mark on people, but also people to leave their mark on me. And if I never leveraged love, then I feel like I wouldn't have, one, met so many people, 2, been able to be impacted or be impactful to so many people, and carry those people with me today. Like, I think one of the unique qualities of who I am is that I continue to check up on people and continue to connect with people that might not, if I never picked up my phone and never dialed their number, I would never hear from.
Right.
And I've always heard that, I don't know why you do it, because I've never given you a reason to call me or to connect with me. But Caitlin, you always make sure you check up on me, always make sure that I'm good, always make sure I have everything I need. And I don't deserve it, but I'm so thankful for the fact that you do that. And I think that's so important, especially when we talk about mental health these days, because it's important for people to know that their feelings are validated. It's important for them to know that they're loved. It's important for them to know that they're worthy of grace, even when they don't feel like they deserve it. And if I can do anything in the world, it's that I want to serve others. Like, I don't care if I ever find success in my life, but if I can help people find success in theirs and help them reach their dreams and empower them, their own self, and find their self-worth and who they are, then I feel like I'll have accomplished everything that I ever want to. And when I die on this earth, I'll be fulfilled, and that's what love does for me. That's what love has given me the platform to do. And I will never want anything else out of life but that?
Yeah, my story's pretty similar, but it's just reverse. Like being a black man going into a white community. And I was 24 years old, very young. Did I really deserve a head job at the time? Probably not. It was so bad. It was so funny because, especially in this time too, that, people are like, oh, don't watch the news, this, that, and that. They shape this kind of to meet this, and they make this their agenda. And I'm thinking to myself, when I go back and I reflect at that time, one news channel interviewed me, and it's because the person who interviewed me knew who I was and had followed my growth. One parent was excited about me getting that job, and everybody else was just mad haters, and it was kind of crazy because everybody shaped their own story of who I was, and the only story I knew was I loved the game of basketball. When I got to this community, the coach that was there before me, he took a basketball machine out of there, which the shoot machine is $7,000 now, worth about $500 back then. He didn't even give me the keys to the office. The sheriff's office actually had to go get me the keys to my own office. He drained my money all out of my Booster Club account, so I had negative $200. I owed somebody. And you think to yourself, like, why am I even taking this job? Like, nobody likes me, like, and even half of the kids, I would say 75% of the kids were told one thing about me before I even stepped on court. We don't know who this guy is. He didn't even play college basketball, this. And you think to yourself, like, little do people know about basketball, one of the most successful NBA coaches in the game today is Eric Spoelstra, who was a stat guy. You know what I mean? Was a book brainiac guy, was a teacher, was a person that learned the game. So you think to yourself, like, you don't really have to be this crazy, like, Michael Jordan basketball, Kobe Bryant basketball guru to teach the game of basketball, especially at the high school level, and especially at a school that doesn't win basketball games, right? So it wasn't a high profile job. I felt like I deserved it. I was a great teacher, great for the school. But then when you think about the track record that I laid in the next 7 years, we win a state championship in weightlifting. We go to playoff when we should never win. We were ranked in the state 2 seasons in a row. Had 9 college basketball players come out of those 7 years. So one every year. And I had, the highest history scores 1 year in the whole state of Florida for the 167 kids that were taking my history course. And you think to yourself, like, man, my love was challenged when I first took this job. It's like, everybody hates me, and I'm like, why am I even doing this? I must be crazy. But it was that passion I had. It was that choice. Like you said, love is a choice. I chose to love that community. And then the next thing you know, when you leave that community, you have 9 players that are basketball bound to college, more than any basketball any school in the community to have college players. Everybody was leaving their schools, coming to my high school because they wanted to go play college basketball because they were seeing my kids play college basketball. You see kids that should have never even played varsity basketball go play college basketball. I was raising anywhere from $45,000 to $60,000 a year. Left the school with $15,000 in the account, so $15,000 in the green. And all these relationships and all these different things. When I left, I mean, I had, like, I had people crying. I come back in the community within 18 months. Just, my family's here and COVID, so I'm, taking care of family. And you hear the stories about, oh my God, we miss you. Oh, because you could see the impact I left. And so you think to yourself, and it goes back to gaining wisdom. And when you reflect and you talk about love and you say, never change who you are. Always be that genuine person. Always understand and gain the wisdom that what you do changes lives. You see what I'm saying? And so here at Area Code 459, we're using this platform to now change lives. I'm not on the court anymore. I'm not in that school where I was, but everything behind this platform, everything behind who I am has come from the lessons that I had to learn in all of that experience that I had with those 7 years. And I appreciate that community more than you know, because I needed some of that hate. I needed some of that misunderstanding. I needed some of that, those fallacies and those false stories and those false, narratives. I needed all that in order to build the grit of who I am. And trust me, when I walk into my company, we just did something that has never been done in our company's history 2 nights ago, or Friday night. And everybody was like, it's because of people like you. People like you that understand how to be on a team, that understand how to do the right things, that understand how to push and make us successful. So I appreciate that community. And because of them, I'll continue to choose to love and inspire and empower.
Yeah.
So Caitlin, man, this has been a great episode, man. I hate that it's wrapping up because I know we could continue to go. But at the end of every episode, we come to our huddle. So we're going to do our call to actions, and then we're going to do our models, and we're going to get out of here. So what's your call to action?
I'd say to make sure either daily or weekly that you have a moment where you can just pause. A moment to slow down, a moment to sit down and reflect, a moment to see where you need to grow. But find a moment where you can pause and breathe and relax and find an internal peace, because everybody needs that reset.
I like it. I'm going to stay on the same vibe, but I want everybody to know that, guess what? Life is not all sparkles and rainbows. It's not all candy canes and unicorns. There are going to be pitfalls, downfalls, setbacks, but those are there for a big comeback. So in order to make that comeback, why don't you leverage some of those lessons? Every day I think about the community and all the things that I went through. But I don't think of it as to feel hate in my heart, but it's to feel my love, because I know that if I could change one life every day, that I'm going to have thousands upon thousands upon thousands changed hearts in the world. So what I want you to do is use an opportunity to reflect. And when you reflect, take those lessons and build wisdom and also build success. It's been great, Caitlin. I'm going to go first, and then I'll let you finish up with your motto. Remember, relationships over transactions, and let love be the frequency.
And don't forget, never discount your value, and let's get 1% better every day.
All right, Caitlin. I'll let you later. Peace.
Yeah.